The tendency to turn reflective at the start of a new year is perhaps more powerful than making New Year's resolutions. This is the stuff of myths, like the Roman two-headed god Janus, who can look forward and backwards towards the future or the past, or the Sankofa, West African bird that learns to value its community roots while still holding the egg of the future in its beak. Before I journeyed on the path to become a Unitarian Universalist minister, I was a clinical social worker practicing in Charlottesville, Virginia. I often heard people's stories of painful lives and difficult circumstances. Folks were trying hard to be resilient, often in the face of personal chaos or crisis. And during groups, some people would share that their experiences were not as hard as others, that they had nothing to complain about, nothing to regret. So I wonder about that from time to time, how the comparisons they made were not as essential as realizing their feelings that they had and developing empathy for others. And yet, I often compared my life to that of those who insisted that they had no regrets, because I sometimes do feel regret. I ponder how my awareness has grown over the years about my own pathway in life. This fall, I picked up the 2020 book, The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. It's an easy read, and I understand that it was one of your common reads last year, maybe. And it has a premise that asks me, at least how I interpret it, to meditate deeply on the choices in your life that sometimes, or maybe often, turned out differently than you expected or hoped. In the book, the central character, Nora, feels that her life is meaningless and hopeless. She is, in a word, depressed. Gradually, it's through the Midnight Library, this place between life and death. She gets the opportunity there to find out how alternate choices would have shaped her life, made her life completely different. And she has conversations with the only inhabitant of the library, a librarian who is an avatar of a very special librarian she had and knew and had conversations with when she was in school, who was there to support her when she needed it the most. And she finds out how one decision after another, sort of like dominoes falling into place, altered the course of her entire life and that of others in her community circles. Now, the most fascinating part of this book for me is seeing how every choice is related. How in your life, how do you consider choices that you made in childhood or in your youth, and how those impacted other facets of your life? I appreciate Liz's reflection about her piano lessons and her writing in college. It's so often in our lives that it takes us so long to figure out the full picture after a decision has been made. The lessons stretch on into adulthood, and disappointments or feelings of failure can haunt us. I remember a fantasy I had. It was a little fantasy, but it was a fantasy nonetheless, that I might be a flight attendant. I applied, but I wasn't selected after an interview. And I imagine how my life would have changed if I had been selected. I would have missed out on all the good community work that we did with children and adults who were traumatized. I likely wouldn't be speaking with you today. Now I'm happy that I didn't get that job, but at the time, it did feel like a personal failure. A small one, but still one that would have had a lasting impact on my life. As the librarian told Nora, never underestimate the big importance of small things. You must always remember that. I've often thought about how one part of our lives is connected to other parts and how people that we've met along the road in life have transformed us, even if they're only minor characters in our life drama. They are tiny bits of synchronicity, what the psychiatrist Carl Jung had a term for, meaningful coincidences that take place that give us information about deep lessons and connections between seemingly unrelated events or people. One of Jung's primary illustrations of synchronicity was a story he told about a patient in therapy who was stuck. She couldn't move beyond where she was. And so one day during a session, she was talking about a dream she had in which she described a piece of jewelry that was shaped just like a golden beetle. Jung heard this tapping on the window. And then he opened the window and he grabbed a scarab beetle that flew in. And he held the beetle out to the patient and said, Here is your scarab. That living beetle offered her a connection between the inner world of her dreams and the outer world around her. A reminder to look for those patterns. I invite you to think about the patterns in the choices you've made in your life. Think about what you have done so far with your one wild and precious life, as Mary Oliver wrote in The Summer's Day, and how those choices are all connected. You know, we begin making choices early in our childhood, most often, whether those are what color socks should we wear today, the red ones, the blue ones, the white ones, or what friends we should hang out with. Sometimes we move away from our hometowns, or we stay mostly in one place all our lives. We keep friends throughout our lives, or we lose touch with them. And sometimes they re-enter our lives, but sometimes they don't. Our worlds are really composites of choices and happenings that propel us forward or stymie us in some way. These interrelated pieces of our lives are like the scarab beetle that Jung handed to his patient. They offer us a chance to see patterns in the wide panorama of our lives. Understanding our lives as holistic enables us to look at underlying patterns of values that we hold most dear, such as those that you lift up at the beginning of your service: interdependence, equity, transformation, pluralism, generosity, justice, and the core value of love. Our lives are so different. Each of us is unique, but these are the things that hold us together in community. The values that carry us throughout our lives help us to envision what is possible given who we are and what we cherish. The meaning of our lives is in living life fully living. It's the living out what we are called to do to bless this world as we are able, regardless of the outward shape our lives have taken, regardless of how tough that might be. It can be so easy to lose the big picture, to see our lives in bits and pieces, to lose sight of what transformation is possible within the tiny frame of this one embodied life we share. I want to leave you with an adapted Indian folk tale. There was once a wise woman who seemed able to predict when the rains would come or not come, or how to heal a sick child, or how to calm angry neighbors. It was said she was never, ever wrong. But the children thought that it was not possible to always be right, and one boy in particular was out to prove her wrong. He caught a small songbird in his net and, holding it behind his back so no one could see what he held, he walked to the wise woman's home. "Old woman, people say you know everything, so prove it. What am I holding behind my back?" The old woman could barely make out the faint sounds of a bird's wing rustling. "I don't know everything," she replied. "However, I do believe that you are holding a bird." This made the boy furious. He decided he would ask the woman whether the bird was alive or dead. And if the woman replied alive, he would crush it with his fingers. And if she answered dead, he would bring the bird from behind him and let it go and prove her wrong. Either way, she would be wrong. So he said, "Tell me now, is the bird I am holding alive or dead?" The wise woman paused and spoke calmly. "The answer, my friend, the answer is in your hands. The answer is in your hands." The boy realized the wise woman was right again. The answer was in his hands, and so gently he brought his hands to his chest, and looking into the eyes of the tiny, fragile bird, he said, "I'm sorry, little one." And then he opened his hands to let it go. May we all see how the answer is in our hands. To live by our values is to live beyond regret and into infinite possibilities. May it be so. May it be so. Our benediction is this. Life calls to us. It holds us captive or it sets us free. May this hour in our lives continue to offer us spiritual sustenance, courage, determination to do what must be done in the fields of justice and in the love that transforms us all, so that you find the answer that is within your hands, the answer within our hands. May that be so.